One other person we need to welcome today is standing at the lectern. My boss.
Not an easy job.
My companion, my partner, the love of my life, and so I'm quite biased when I thought about who might help me today to talk about how we show compassion to people we love. I couldn't think of a better person. And that in Pat's sharing of some stories of her life, that will be clearly revealed to you this morning. By the way, there are supposedly 644 laws in Moses' law, and I know that I have broken number 437 several times. You'll never know what number 437 is.
I do.
Are you? I might know. This text that Peter read this morning is at the core, is at the heart of the scriptural sacred text for us. To love God with all of our heart and soul and mind and strength, and passion and intelligence, as it said, and moreover, to love our neighbor as ourselves, and that includes loving ourselves. So the question I raise for the day is how do we show compassion to people we love? Next Sunday out in the park, I will address the opposite of this, is how do we show compassion to people who are difficult, who have denied us, who are giving us great heartbreak. And I accept the challenge, but it's a big one. Today, the disciples have been watching Jesus. Jesus has been watching the Sadducees, one of the three sects of the religious elite, the Pharisees, the Essenes, and the Sadducees, and each one of them in their own ways always trying to catch Jesus in some sort of philosophical quandary. And in this case, just before this, they tell Jesus about a man who was married to a woman, and he died, and he had 7 brothers. There were 7 brothers, and each one then was required, one of those laws, to marry the widow. None of them ever had any children. And so the question was, when at the resurrection, whose husband, which man will be the husband of the woman? Now, John is going to figure that out. He's going to be thinking about that. So Jesus said, well, ultimately he says, you're all wrong. You are called to love God with all your heart and soul and mind. And I translate that into compassion, being compassionate to the people we love. Pat, you have done what I consider to be some amazing, compassionate, and generous things in your life. One of them was to donate a kidney to a person you cared for and you loved. How did that come about? What is that about?
Well, many years ago, I don't know, doesn't matter how many years ago, I was sitting in church, and in the bulletin, there was a little paragraph about a boy. This is when we were at Glade United Church of Christ in Walkersville. There was a notice about a teenage boy who needed a kidney and didn't give his name, any of the circumstances. And I was really struck. I have to tell you, I know how to pray to God, but hearing God is a whole different thing. But I'm pretty sure that feeling was God. And anyway, I thought, I could do this. This is something I could do. So after church, I went home, I notified Johns Hopkins, started the paperwork, talked to you about it, and you didn't like the idea at all. And I wasn't about to do something like that you were so hesitant about. So I ended up the other thing was I thought, here's a teenage boy that I don't know, and he could, after he gets my kidney, could go out and celebrate with his friends and drink and crash his car. And there goes my kidney. So that was the other reason I decided not to do it. Probably more than.
So you don't put it all on me.
No, it wasn't all your fault.
Okay.
No, I like to say that, but I had my own doubts. But fast forward a couple years later, there is a religious, cultural, educational institute in near Erie, Pennsylvania, New York, called Chautauqua, and there's a United Church of Christ Society there, and every summer we have a pastor in residence, and one summer it was a woman named Laverne Gill, and we were in the chapel of the UCC society. I was practicing because I was going to play the piano for church, and I heard Gerry say, well, ask Pat, she'll do it. And I thought, what's this about? And so I walked back to where he was talking with Laverne, and he said, Pat, Laverne needs a kidney, and I told her you could give her one of yours. And I thought,
I am guilty. I said that.
I thought, what's a girl supposed to do when her husband starts giving away her body parts?
It's true story.
He's never lived that down. I said, I think that was really mine to say. He wasn't wrong, but anyway, so shortly thereafter, that same day, she and I went out, had some water together, because I don't think they had alcohol in the grounds then, decided to do it. It just turns out she had the paperwork, so we faxed the paperwork in. It was Fairfax Inova where it was done. And this was at the end of August, and it felt like the whole process went forever, but it turned out that we were a match. And the only thing now that you need to match is compatible blood types. And I'm O negative, which is the universal donor. She was whatever the universal recipient is. So that was no problem. And they have anti-rejection drugs, so you don't have to match the 5 markers like you used to. So,
why were some people surprised about the two of you matching?
Because Laverne is black. And I think people didn't think, even in this day and age, didn't think that you could have a cross-racial donation. Blood is blood. There wasn't any reason at all. I'm sure some of you are still surprised, but really, that blood is blood. And actually, after we did that, anyway, so it was on Thanksgiving Eve, I think? Yeah. Thanksgiving Eve, the day before Thanksgiving. So I thought it took a long time, but it was just August through November, that we had the surgery. And so I had, I think, Jell-O and water for Thanksgiving dinner that year, something like that. And I don't have any side effects. Sometimes I get a pain in my side where the stitches are like kind of that are kind of tight. And I kind of like it because it reminds me of that. And of Laverne, who died last year, but she had 10 good years. And the reason I gave it to her is because there are lots of reasons, but she's a writer, she's a pastor. She used to run a radio station in Washington, D.C. And I knew that she still had a lot more that she had to give, and I wanted to help her to do that.
I know this, but if I heard your story, I wouldn't imagine that this was an isolated instance in your life.
Well, it was the only kidney I gave.
Well, that's true. And I'm here to say in front of all of you, you cannot give a kidney to anyone.
Another one? Okay, I promise. But it is interesting to me. Why do we have 2 kidneys and 2 lungs, but only 1 heart and 1 brain? I don't know. It just made me wonder about that. But I was glad that I didn't need it.
But you have done many other things that show compassion to people you didn't know but you came to love. I'm recalling the great support and work that we did together in Honduras, but also you're going to Nigeria.
Yes.
Why did you go to Nigeria?
I'm the member of a local Rotary Club, and Rotary International, along with the World Health Organization and the CDC and some other international organizations, we're on a campaign to end polio in the world by 2005. Haven't quite made it yet. There's still 2 countries left. But somebody gave a plea for us to give money in my Rotary Club, and I went up to the speaker afterwards and said, I don't want to give money, I want to go. And honestly, I mean, this was as much for me as for anything. But so I went to Nigeria to do polio immunizations, and the way they're done is they're vaccines, oral vaccines. Because I'm not a nurse, I don't think I could give anybody an injection anyway. So I went over with other Rotarians from around the country that I didn't know, but I got to know well, and we met with Rotarians there in Nigeria. Am I running out of time already?
No.
Oh, I just saw you look at your
checking.
watch. Okay. We met with other Nigerians over there, and the vaccine is interesting because it has to stay cold, and it doesn't get cold in Nigeria, but we put them in coolers, kept them in the shade the best we could, and we traveled out to an island of Nigeria. We were in Lagos, which is the largest city. It's not the capital, but it's the largest city. It is the most disorganized place I have seen in my life, and really kind of scary. And so we went out to islands, we went to schools, we went to marketplaces, and then we also had to go up and down. Not all the kids go to school, so we would go up and down some streets and yell to people that we were doing this. And I got assigned to one of I think she was a nurse, and she was not very friendly and kind of skeptical about why I was there, why we were there, why we were doing this. And one day when we were walking down this dirt road, this street, I yelled out, "Ekaro," which is good morning, which she had been doing. And she got this big smile on her face, and we were friends from then on because she could see that my intent was good. So we did that for, 3 or 4 days, and then this isn't a real aside, but it was also, my group leader got very, very sick.
And this is where I roll my eyes and say, why are you so compassionate?
Anyway, she got real sick. And she had to have a blood transfusion. And we're in Nigeria in the early 2000s. AIDS was still rampant. As far as I know, it still is. And I just thought, I can't let her get a transfusion in Nigeria during this time. And I knew that I was a universal donor, so that wouldn't be an issue. So I ended up giving her blood. I was a little nervous about it. The hospitals are not quite like our hospitals are. And the equipment looked clean enough. It was when they started putting cardboard boxes on top of each other in order to get the whatever I was getting, the fluid I was getting, to come down so it would flow down with gravity. But anyway, and all of I just have to say, this is such an aside, but all of the books with the names of everybody and what was wrong with them were open up on the counters. They don't have HIPAA over there. That's all I can say. But it was successful, and she was fine. I don't know if she was fine. She probably had to have, but at least she wasn't sick like she was, and she didn't die. So I missed a day of immunizations, but nobody else was going to do it anyway.
So I know that's not the end of the story.
Okay.
Because on the way home.
So on the way home from Nigeria, I sat next to a young woman, it's probably 20 at the time, from Zimbabwe. And she was going to be a domestic in the house of a World Bank executive, also from Zimbabwe, because there was a program that would match these people up. And I had recently read stories about how domestics and other people that had come, especially had come from other countries, but certainly here as well, had come over and then were abused in any number of ways. And it was just sort of being found out. And I thought, okay, it's possible that this could not end well. So I gave her my card, and I said, and she was going to we were living in, it doesn't matter, Frederick, I don't know.
Somewhere.
But she was in Arlington. The house where she was going to work was in Arlington. So we were close. And I gave her my card, and I said, if you ever need anything at all, call me, because we're really close, and I'll be there. And about 6 months later, she did call me, and she was sort of talking in code, and I said, are you okay? And she said, not really. So, and you were part of this too. We made arrangements for us to go down and pick her up. We had to pick her up at a shopping center because the family she didn't want them to know she was meeting us. And this, I think, was in February, and we took her, so I gave her she didn't have a coat. She did not have a winter coat. She said the only time she went outside was to go get the mail and come back again. So we took her around Washington, D.C., and she said it was the best day she had ever had in her entire life, which I kind of believe, and all we did was drive around Washington, D.C. But she did tell us she hadn't been sexually abused, but psychologically, yes. And she would, sometimes she had to use a toothbrush to get the carpet all going in the same direction. And in the middle of the night, if the lady of the house was thirsty, she was down, Lillian was down, I think in the basement in a room. She had to go up 2 stories and then go down to the kitchen, get her a glass of water, and then walk up and give it to her. She had to clean the toilets when they were absolutely not clean, if you get my meaning. And when they paid her, they took some of the money back because they said, we know you can't use this all in Zimbabwe. And I said, look, and she worked, however many hours she worked. She was always on call. And I said, this is illegal, this is against labor laws. Let me get you out of here. And she said, no. She said, I have a 2-year contract, and I'm going to fulfill that contract. She was so stubborn. The other thing was that the man that of this family was high and mighty poobah or whatever in her village or in Zimbabwe, and she was so afraid that if she did anything wrong, that there would be repercussions for her village, and I wouldn't put it against him. He's a World Bank executive. So 2 years at 2 years, when her contract was up, Gerry and I went down there, and I told her, we had talked on the phone a couple times, but not very much. I told her we were going to pick her up that day, and on the way down, she called me, and she said the woman, the guy luckily was traveling, but the woman had taken her passport and had called the police. And I said, okay, don't worry about calling the police because they're not going to do anything. She always threatened to call the police. Well, in Zimbabwe, that was a threat. Here, of course, it wasn't for her. So we got down there.
But we called the police.
Oh, yeah, we called the police on the way down there. That's right. And they said, when you get down there and see what the situation is, then call us and we'll come if we need to do that. So fine. So we got there. Gerry and I went to the door. Gerry had to hold me back because I was about to go after this terrible woman. And she said, I'm going to call the police. And I said, don't worry, we already have. And so Gerry told me to get Lillian. He would deal with this woman. And Lillian was scared to death. And I just looked at her and I said, do you trust me? And she said, yes. And I said, well, just please come with me. And she'd already packed her things. So she came with me. We sat in the car. The police came. They said, just wait in the car, don't come in. And we saw the woman in the windows. We saw her go upstairs, so we knew she was getting the passport. And he came down again, came out to our car, gave us the passport, and he said, get out of here, these are not good people. And I said, you don't have to tell us twice. And poor Lillian, it was just, and I found out from one of her relatives later that she'd had nightmares for months afterwards because of her, probably still, I don't know. So she came to live with us for a while, probably until Christmas, and then she had relatives. She had she called him a brother, but brothers are cousins, whatever. It was really her cousin. He lived in Dallas. She wanted to visit him for Christmas. So she did that, and then it turns out there was a whole Zimbabwean community in Dallas, and she felt really at home there because of that. And she's fine. She ended up getting married. I went to her wedding. She's got a couple of kids, and she's living her life. She cannot go back to Zimbabwe because of the visa that she had to come over, and it's kind of a long story about why she can't go back. and she can't be a citizen, but she's here legally, if that makes any sense. So she's here legally, she's doing okay. We communicate not as often as I'd like, and she calls me Mom, and she calls you Dad. So she's good.
Thank you for sharing these stories. Now, I don't know what you call this. I was going to say it's a spoiler alert. Showing compassion to people you love, following the great commandment, doesn't necessarily by any means require you to give your kidney or to go to Zimbabwe, go to Nigeria, or take in a young woman you meet on an airplane. It requires just simply in the ordinary activities of our lives, thinking the way that Pat thinks when she encounters a situation or an opportunity like this, and reaching out to those. All of the people, Pat didn't know these people, but she came to love them so quickly that it was, I think, so much easier than to offer her compassion to them. Just briefly, quickly, is it any coincidence that both of these major events happen at Thanksgiving? Is there any meaning in that for you?
I think it's more, to me, I take it more that at least two of them happened in church and happened when, like when you were talking to Laverne at the back of the chapel, and the other time when I thought I was going to give a kidney to this young man. The Nigeria decision to go happened to Dutch's daughter at a Rotary Club, so take from that what you will. I don't know if it was a coincidence. I do know it had to do with, with my spirituality with God. Like I said, my hearing God, it's not good. I'm hard of hearing, but I did get a feeling in each one of these things that it was compelling. Same thing with going to Honduras with you the first time. That happened in church too, and I thought, right. Okay, I have to go. But that was all you.
I've heard you use the word gratitude. Out of your gratitude.
Yes. People asked me about the kidney, why I did it, and I said, and my common response is, it's the deepest expression of the gratitude that I have for my life. I mean, that's just true. I'm so grateful for everything that I have and for everything I have had, and these things are a way of expressing that.
And may that be true for you and for me and all those you love this day. Amen.
Amen.
Blessings on you, Pat. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.